Hello, my name is Lucas. This is a bit of lit, and I am here to talk about The Shadow King by Maaza Mengiste. And as Marlon James wrote, beautiful and devastating is right. This is a great novel that I have some problems with, just stylistically. But it's a great story about the second Italian Ethiopian War in the 1930s that Mussolini waged. And it follows a couple different characters, Hirut, Aster, Kidane, in terms of some Ethiopians. It also follows Haile Selassie, the Ethiopian emperor, and it also follows two characters primarily on the Italian side, those being Colonel Carlo Fucelli and Ettore Navarra. Fucelli is just a monster of a human being, sadistic, uses the local women for his own desires, later gets humiliated. But Ettore Navarra is a photographer. And that is a huge part of this, the photographer. There's sort of a frame story because it begins with Hirut in the 70s, sort of waiting for a photographer because she's got a box. And then most of the story is set in the 30s to tell you about what happened in her life during the war and how she came and suffered through a horrific tragedy. But Ettore is a Jewish character who's worried about the rising anti-Semitism in Italy after having been, having his family sort of have to escape Russia. So, anyway, he's the photographer. There's also, like I said, focusing on Haile Selassie, who didn't abdicate, but went running with his 78s and his records to escape the war for a time period, for quite a few years, to be honest. And we follow him and see what he's thinking, and we get a lot of depth there, which is very interesting. And in his place, the Ethiopians raise the Shadow King to run with that person as the leader, as Haile Selassie. Nobody particularly knows, nobody really cares. He's now, this Shadow King is a symbol for the people of Ethiopia during this war, where they are utterly outmatched. The Italians have highly advanced technology, militarily speaking, compared to the Ethiopians. So the Ethiopians, Kidane, Hirut, Aster, and all the others, everybody is allowed to join in on the war, to fight their fight for the war, including the women. And they have to resort to guerrilla warfare. And the novel itself is very beautifully written, very grand and epic. It's sort of like an origin myth in a way. Maybe not an origin myth, but that's sort of how it feels like. I can imagine that this would be this particular war that the Ethiopians won at great cost would be a mythic event, given the odds, so to speak. And it does have that feel to it in here. And from the interviews I've seen, it sounds like this is a story, an epic story told. At least the Italian-Ethiopian War. Maybe not specifically how this rendition of it is told, but it does sound like the stories told of the Italian-Ethiopian War are grand and epic and mythological in a way, from what the interviews with Maaza Mengiste say. Like it says from New York Times, lyrical, remarkable. Certainly it is. There is this moment, Navarra, I wrote this down, Navarra photographs prisoners that are thrown off a cliff because the Italians are barbaric under Fucelli, and it says, they spill over the edge as if gliding underwater, drowning and surging up for air, spinning between a rapturous dream and a paralyzing nightmare, ghastly shapes of unspeakable words, dark marks against the sky. Ooh, very lyrical. Beautiful bit of prose for something incredibly bleak. There is a tremendous amount of violence, as one would expect with a war novel. Not just war violence, but sexual violence as well, which is not unsurprising, given that, again, it is a war novel. But that does make it quite difficult to read, and if you want to avoid that kind of thing, I would avoid the novel in that case. Otherwise, it's very interesting. The thing that I don't like about it stylistically is that it doesn't use punctuation marks for speech. It doesn't use quotation marks, which makes it difficult to follow what is happening. Otherwise, you can get used to it. That's perfectly fine. But yeah, I'm not really a fan of going against the grain that way. But that doesn't detract from the story necessarily. It detracts from the writing for me, but it doesn't detract from the story or the characters. So, it doesn't make it a bad book by any means. It's just something to be on the lookout for. The violence and the lack of quotation marks, speech marks, can make it challenging to read. Otherwise, the characters are very well thought out, and you'll feel quite emotional reading this. It's a very powerful story, has a mythic quality, very lyrical prose, very well written. But yeah, those are, one is not so much a complaint, just a warning, and the other one is my complaint. I don't like it when any author doesn't use quotation marks. Just use them, man. But I don't know the reason for that stylistic choice. My guess is that war is disorienting, so to give that sense to the reader, don't use the quotation marks. So everything sort of blends, and it really blends in with the mythic thing. And if that's the case, yeah, I can respect the choice, but still not a decision that I enjoy. But yeah, that's my main detraction for the story. Otherwise, thank you for watching. Have a good day. Goodbye.